Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 2 of my fantastic Voyage, A Tale of Two Proteai, Proteus video. And so in this video, I show you a little bit of the ring dome light that I've completed as a sub-assembly. But most of it I'm working on the base and getting that constructed and the painting and getting all those things put together. I'll have one more video after this with the finale and showing the work on the sub itself and the figures. I actually completed several bits of video, but I was in a hurry to complete this build in time for Wonderfest, which at the time of me filming this intro right now is already over. I came home yesterday. It's now Tuesday after Wonderfest, so I'm going to be having another video coming out a little bit later today, going over Wonderfest, specifically showing that and the two models that I took to it. But I didn't really have a lot of time right before going down to Wonderfest. The last several days, last week pretty much, I was in a rush to completing the the larger 8-inch Proteus build with the inner ear. And so I did do some filming and I did do some stills and that kind of thing. I just didn't get a chance to get them edited together or uploaded. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and finish the little bits, intro and outro for this particular video and get this uploaded. Obviously you're watching it. And then probably in the next day or two at the most, I will finish putting together the last bit of video showing me painting the sub and the figures and modifying the sub and that kind of thing, and then show the final reveal of this particular build. I'm still going to keep this particular build video going afterwards for the smaller Proteus, but that'll be coming down in the future. But I will be showing the finale of the current inner ear version for the 8-inch. So, all right, and I know that's probably a lot of confusion, but let's go ahead and take a look at work on the lights and the base for the inner ear build. All right, so as you saw from the previous stills, I did quite a lot of work on the upper ring that'll go over top of the cockpit or the pilot, and in order to be able to light this ring. And in the last video, I was showing you some flexible filaments that I want to use for that, and I have some newer ones which I'll show here in just a moment. But first I wanted to show you a couple of things I did. So you saw the dome in the last video that I made. So this is the 3D printed part that is clear that I cleaned up. I gouged out a little bit of a groove right here in the back where the filament are going to be able to have room to move to be able to come down into the ship. And likewise, I cut a little hole there. I measured where the ring's going to go, and I have a hole coming through for the wiring and part of the flexible filament to go down into the sub. So all you're going to see is this on the top, and you're not going to see any of the filament. And then what I did was I went ahead and masked this off, because this top has to be white to match the ship, just the top. The outer part is clear for the light to come out. And I left the inner part clear as well, because it will actually light up the cockpit. And I'll show you that here in a moment as well. Or the pilot. It'll give you some cool light there and in the dome. So I put a bunch of tape around it. I first painted it with a primer. And then I went over that with flat black, a couple of coats. Let those dry in between each one. Then I went over it with some silver. These are all just rattle cans. And then finally went over it with some white. It's just flat white. I didn't want to go for gloss. I think it's going to be a little bit too much on this size of a ship. I may go with a satin as far as the rest of the ship. We'll see. But I'm not that worried about this. There's going to be a lot of light glowing or spilling over this, so you're really not going to even see that much. And it's going to look shiny anyway. All right. One other thing I made is I took a piece of really thin, clear styrene that I have, and I cut a strip of it, and I glued it together to make this ring. Where's the back of it? Right there. Obviously, one part of it I had to overlap, and I put that on the back. So, and even there, it's not that obvious when the lights are in it. And then I took some thin round stock styrene, as you can see, made them the right size, and I glued them in the top and the bottom edge of this, just to give it a little more finished kind of a look. So what it does is then this goes right over top, and this is actually going to be attached onto this top part. And then obviously light is going to shine through that clear part. So you're not just going to see the bare flexible filament shining through, which really wouldn't look right. There you go. It's actually kind of odd in the film, which I've watched many, many, many times. There's actually a scene in the beginning where we first see the sub, where none of this is there. There's actually like a concave scoop section there. I guess they hadn't put the lights in yet on the practical set that they get into. But it's pretty obvious in a few shots that there really aren't any, there's not that clear circle around it. There are no lights, anything like that. Obviously, the difference between some of the lights in the models and then later the practical set are a little different as well. There was definitely some sourciness in the film where you can almost make out the separate little bulbs that they had, which works out well because you get the same effect from the filament. So what I'm going to do is wrap the filament around this on the inside, around this little groove, and then it'll go down through this hole into the sub. What I'll do is make this one whole separate assembly. So I'll have the filament glued onto this, then I'll glue this outer ring onto this, and then ultimately the dome on top of that. And then the wires will be hanging down. It'll go down, feed down through here once I finish all this. All right, so let me go ahead and show you the new filaments that I got. All right, so I got in some new flexible filaments from a company called Adafruit. Here's the pack, ADAFRUIT altogether, adafruit.com. They sell several different lights and electronics and components and things. But these ones are much smaller. These are 130 millimeters. The ones that I had showed previously that I was testing was from Brick Stuff, and they're 300 millimeters. Both warm white filaments, both 3 volts. So basically 300 millimeters is a foot. or 30 centimeters. These ones are 130 millimeters or 130 millimeters is 13 centimeters. They're about 5 inches long. So here's how long it is. I have wires soldered on. Very simple to use. Somebody asked me in my Facebook post how difficult it was to work with, and they're really not. On the end of either of these kinds, you have a little metal tab. And the positive end has a little hole in it. If we could make that out. Okay, there we go. Yeah, little teeny hole. That's how you tell the difference between the positive and the negative. And they just take 3 volts. I'll probably end up using a AA battery pack to power this. And the nice thing about the 3 volts is if I want to put any other SMDs inside of the ship, I can just use 3 volts for all of them. So they come in different colors, but I just got some warm white ones. All right, so I started working on putting this around the ring of the bubble dome. Let me go ahead and pull that out and I'll show you. All right, so it's going to get washed out quite a bit in the camera, but it looks nice in real life. Oops, sorry, crossing some wires there. It isn't quite that bright, and it's more of a warm white, but you can see how it's going to glow around the outer edge and not through the top flat part of the ring, but it will glow on the inside of the ring. So it's going to light up the pilot sitting in the chair. I had to tape it down in the front, of course, since it wants to pop up out of there. Sorry. Come on. Stop touching. Stop that. Let me see if I can dim this light down a little bit. Oops. Here we go. Not too bad. Makes it a little bit darker, but kind of gives you a little better idea of the brightness. And there's a little bit of sourciness. It's really hard to see on the camera. Sorry, the back sticks up a little bit too. But I like that because in the film, there is, at least in the models for sure, an obvious separation of little lights behind the ring that are lighting that up. So, okay. All right. So the next step will be to go ahead and get all of this top ring put together as a sub-assembly. Get the filament glued into the 3D printed ring part. Get the thin styrene sheet glued around it, and the wires coming out of the bottom. The rest of the filament coming out of the bottom. So I won't glue it onto the ship just yet, but I'll get those parts glued together and then clean up the edge where the clear styrene part meets the 3D printed part to make it look more seamless. I might even put another little thin piece of styrene strip around that. We'll see. But have that all done as a sub-assembly, and then once the ship gets all painted and everything else is ready to go, this will be easy enough to install. Turn that back up. It'll be easy enough to install onto the sub, but I'll have to get the rest of the sub all cleaned up, painted, ready to go before I can put this in, because it's going to be a pain to have that attached and try to do painting and masking and all that. So, okay. All right, so I got it all together, and I was doing some tests with the lights and everything. I went back and did some masking off again. And well, first let me back up a bit. So once I got this glued on, I put this piece of styrene thin round stock around the edge, as you can see. Some of the parts are a bit rough, like the back of it. A little bit of the paint bled through a bit, but none of that can you see once it's all lit up because it's pretty bright. And plus, we're going to be seeing it from this side, which is the clean side, and the front, the way it's on the display. And there's underneath where you can see that it's glued in. So I used 5-minute epoxy, and I held the flexible filament around there until it hardened. And then I went back in and I used some CA glue to glue the ring around the edge of this. A little bit of cleanup. Now, I wasn't happy. This inner ring here I had left clear, and it was glowing through it. I wasn't happy with that. I don't think there's any light coming up from the top like that. So what I did was I masked off around the edge. I masked off the inner diameter, inner part of this, which I still want to glow, the inner clear part. And I went back over it again with the masking, the black paint, the silver, and the white, so I could block the light coming up from the top of it, but still the inner part is lit up for the pilot. So got it to where I wanted it to be. So this is all complete as a single sub-assembly. I don't have the dome glued on yet. I'll do that later. But obviously these wires go down into the sub like I showed previously. So let me put a battery on this and show you how that looks now. All right, there we go. So looking pretty sweet. Now you can see from the top, the light isn't coming through the top of the dome structure, but it is coming through in that inner part that'll light up the pilot and illuminate the pilot. All right, and then if we put the dome on it, the bubble, we get an image of the whole thing. Oops, sorry. It's obviously not glued in place. There we go. So pretty cool. Very cool. And I like how that light on the inside kind of reflects off the dome. And of course, you'll have the pilot in there that you'll be able to see. So, all right, very, very cool. So this is all complete, ready to go as a sub-assembly. So what I'll be working on next is cleaning up the top of the sub, getting some primer on it, filling in any gaps and any defects, and then we'll start getting some of the white. I don't have to light block the top of the dome or the ship, or any of the ship really, because the gray 3D printed material is not translucent. It's very solid, so I won't have to worry about any light blocking there. But I will have to do a lot of priming and cleaning up, and then getting the white coat on it. I think what I'm going to do is similar to this, where I'm going to go with just the spray can of the flat white, and then I ended up putting a little bit of gloss white over this. But I think what I'll do in the ship is I'll start with some semi-gloss. So I'll just do flat white, and then I'll put some light misting of semi-gloss over it, or a satin. And then if that looks good, because it's a smaller ship, so it wouldn't be as shiny. If I need to, I can always put the gloss over that too. So, okay, we're coming along really, really well. All right, and here is the painting that Augie Gonzalez did for me. Interstellar Modeler. Turned out really, really nice. There's his signature down there at the bottom. So it doesn't have the color. It doesn't have any color on it right now. he had experimented. He made a test up and he was experimenting with some things. It was really tricky to come up with the bright, vibrant colors like the turquoise or teal and the blue on it. So what we ended up doing, so what he used was, this is like almost like a navy, like a dark navy, dark blue. Then he used some white with a little bit of blue-gray to come up with these symbols. And he used the idea that that I had thought about, making some stamps out of foam, making some foam cubes and making some stamps, and did all those. And then he put in the little teeny intricate little symbols. He pulled up some images from the film and tried to imitate some of these symbols. He did a really great job. And then, of course, as we talked about, he had made some of them. You can see the gap here is a little bit deeper than it is in some other places. It's not perfectly symmetrical, which is what we want. And obviously, the shapes are not all the same size. They're very random sizes. So he did a great job. And then this is the part that wraps over top of the edge and goes down into the little part with the filaments where Cora falls down into. And so this will be like wrapped over the edge of the platform. And what we'll see is this, where the sub sits on, and then this other part curves up and around some other pieces. So I did begin working on the wood structure at least, or I started with the foam, the permanent one, which I'm still working on. I'll show that here in a little bit. But I was trying a couple of ideas. So we just left it in this navy and the light, very light grayish kind of parts, because I wanted to try some tests with some lights. And I thought maybe if I shine some lights onto it to get the colors, because it seems like that's what they did in the film, even on the smaller model set. And I'll show you what kind of came out with that. I did get some files from Lou Del Maso from Aztec Dummy for some studio, the big studio lamps and the gantries and things that he used in his shuttlecraft interior build, which turned out fantastically. So I was going to play with that a little bit. Let me get the light and I'll kind of show you how that looks on it. All right, so I just have some chip green and blue SMDs. I have them wired into a AA battery pack. And I have this little piece of styrene tube, little piece of styrene tube to try to focus the light in order to give it a better look. You can already kind of see here that it kind of makes it bluish. So what I wanted to do, get out of there, sorry, is put this into here. Hold on one second. All right, to kind of focus the light. And when I put it down, and it's got to be pretty close, it definitely gives it more of a bluer tint. The blue certainly works better than the green. Let me switch it over to the green and I'll show you. All right. There's the green. Yeah, the green doesn't work as well. And I'm right up on it, right up close on it. So the problem is, I mean, it's a clever enough idea, but it just, sorry, hold on, stupid things are touching. It would take a lot. It would take a lot of lights, and they'd have to be fairly close to get the same kind of look. You know, in a film, they're using really bright, strong studio lights. They're going to get a much better result than I'm going to get on a model. And I'd even thought about doing like Lou had done, making it a like the studio set and having the studio lights around it on a gantry and things like that. But I just don't think it's really going to work out, or it's really going to give me the same result that I want. I want some bright and vibrant colors to imitate what you see in the film. So And I had anticipated that that might be the case, but I do have some other ideas that I'm going to try, and let me kind of show you those here. All right, so I had originally made this test initially with my own stamps that I made. I made these just with the green. I wasn't going for the colors. I was just looking for the pattern and design to see how it would work. This was prior to Augie starting on his. And I did some other tests up here kind of thing. So I tried a couple of things. I tried, this is some Tamiya clear blue and clear green, which I kind of used, where I would put it on almost like a wash, thinned out, and rub it off. You can see down here too, a little too dark for my tastes. I had some inks that I tried, and I found some other ones that I like better from Hobby Lobby, and these are the ones that seem to be what I want. These are called Speedball Calligraphy ink. This is indigo blue, super pigmented acrylic. And that's the thing of it, they're very pigmented. They're very deep colors. This is teal green. So these are kind of the two colors that you see primarily. And I did some tests. You can see up here is a test with that. I also did some down over here. And again, that's going to be hard to tell because it's lightening, it's coloring the background and not the actual little cell. Tried some on here, but these I had already done with a light blue, so that's not really a good example. I also put down some clear satin and some clear gloss over them to try to get an idea of how it's going to bring the colors out. So before I do anything on the painting itself, because I don't want to ruin that, I went ahead and made up a test, another test using the actual colors. So here we go. So this looks black, but it's actually a navy. I took some blue craft paint and a little bit of black and just painted the whole background. And then I went over, and Augie had used white with a little bit of blue-gray in it for the little cells, and then the same dark background for the little symbols inside. So I just went ahead and stamped that on. And then once it dried, I dabbed these on with a brush. And so what I'm going to do is go over it. It's all dry now. I'm going to go over it with a test with these and just thin it out and see how well that it brightens these and gives them the color that I want. And that way, once I get the final thing that I want, then I can do it on the full-size painting. And then, of course, like I said, I'm going to experiment with, I have some gloss clear. I have some semi-gloss or satin clear. I also want to try out, and I didn't get any yet, but when I was at Hobby Lobby, I saw some clear that was called Diamond, and it's like a sparkly, but it's not like, I'm trying to think of, it's not as obvious. It's more of a shimmery kind of a look, because a lot of these colors that you see in the film remind me of some colorful fish, and fish scales have that iridescent look to them, and that shine when you look from certain angles on it. So it shifts, like a color shifting almost kind of thing. So, all right. So let me go ahead and do some tests on that, and then we'll see how that's going to work out. All right, so I did some test colors on this sheet that I had made. I have a lot of different layers of things, so none of these are going to be how it's going to permanently look. I was just testing a few things as far as the colors and some other things, which I'll show you here in a second. So initially, I tried just kind of wiping down, brushing the colors over this, and then trying to go back and clean it up, but it just messes up the black and makes it look bad. So then I went in and I used a I used a Q-tip with the with these inks, the teal green and the indigo blue. I just used a Q-tip so I could just apply the ink just on this part, and I did it a couple different places. And that seemed to work out well. Then I could take the Q-tip with a little bit of thinner on it and just take it off of the little symbol so that that got covered up a little bit. And let that dry. Then I tested a few things. So I got this glitter shimmer, which gives it a little bit of a shimmer, but it's not quite a what's the name of it? I can't think of. Not sparkles. It's not like glitter. I don't know. It literally says glitter on it. It isn't like the really thick bits of glitter that you can tell. It's really hard to see it. It just sort of adds a little bit. I don't know if I really like it, but it kind of made a few speckles. And all of these I went over with a satin clear coat just to make sure, to see how it would affect it, if it would still show through. So that's why a lot of these look kind of dull. Originally I had ended up with the last three look pretty good. This one is just the pure teal. This one was the blue, and this one was a mix of the teal and the blue. So I'm going to do like a gradient kind of thing. I'll do like a couple rows of cells that are just the teal, then some with the mid and some with the blue kind of thing. These ones turned out pretty well. Then what I did was I found this color shifting paint, which shifts from aqua to blue. It's pretty cool, actually. I ended up applying it. Let's see if you can see. Yeah, right there. These ones here. What I ended up doing is I wanted to see if I airbrushed it. I thinned it out and airbrushed it over all of them. It seemed to work. It didn't really get rid of the color, but it gives it a little more shine. It's hard to tell in the camera the color changing aspects of it, but it does shift from like an aqua to a blue kind of a thing. But it seems like if I put a clear coat, or I try to just airbrush it on, it tends to not keep its same effect. And if I put a clear satin over it as well, it tends to not do that. So we'll have to play with that. One other thing I did look at were some fluorescent paints. So I have some fluorescent blue and some fluorescent green. And they're neon. They work with a black light. So unfortunately, when I went to Walmart, they didn't have any black lights. They didn't have the black light bulb. They didn't have any of the smaller, like fluorescent ones that are set alone. The problem would be, of course, back to the original idea of putting lights of, green and blue, is I would have to have a black light shining on this to make it glow. Before I do the final thing, I am going to get a black light bulb from somewhere else and just test it out. I'll paint these on somewhere, and I'll just shine a black light on it. If they look like the right colors, because it makes them glow, then I'll consider it. We'll see what happens. But I'm thinking more of, I'm going to go with these, probably using the Q-tip thing, and then maybe go back with the color shift and also dab that on with a Q-tip in some spots, just to give it a little bit of a shine to it. But I can't put it on too heavy, because then it just looks all the same color, and I want this to be different. So we'll see. But I'm getting closer to the finalized image of what I want to do, and then I'll get ready to go ahead and put it onto the painting itself. All right. All right, so I finished getting these wood panels to the right dimensions so that the painting will fit to the edges. when it's wrapped around this. I had to take some more off of the top of each of them and lower it a little bit so that it would fit. It might be slightly a little short on maybe some of these parts at the bottom, but that's okay because I'm going to have material there anyway with tubes coming up, like the fibers, the yellow clear tubes or fibers that Cora falls down into. So that's going to cover all this anyhow. So these are just screwed on for now. They're not permanently put on. But let me go ahead and put the painting on in order to show you how that's going to look. And I have the original Proteus that I got before he made his revisions on it, and I just glued on some tubes to give it a little bit of height for the legs that are going to be extended. So, all right, let's take a look. All right, and here's a mock-up with the painting just taped onto the wood frame. Obviously, I'll have styrene sheet covering the wood and some more supports between the wood that will give a nice smooth surface for the painting to go onto. But I have the right dimensions now that I trimmed down and cut the wood to make it match. And this isn't the sub I'm working on. This was the first version that I got before he made some changes and some corrections on it. So I still have this to use as kind of a mock-up. And as I did in the previous video, I just glued on some little styrene tubes just to raise it up a little bit to show how it's going to be with the extended telescopic legs holding it up on there. So now this front part I think is too big. I'm probably going to cut this in half. I only want a little bit of space down here where I'm going to put like the weird tubes and things that Cora falls down into and gets trapped. And again, this is not going to be to scale to the film, obviously. She falls off and swims down quite a bit before she falls into it, and then they have to go way down and get her and rescue her. But the figures are going to probably be about this big. So it'll be close. I'll have them like down here. I'm not going to have them all the way up to the top of this, but I'll have it like down to this part. So, and other little things, little organic looking things here. Let me turn that to the side and show you how that looks on the side. All right, and there's the side view. It's not going to be displayed on the side. It's going to be displayed on the front, of course. But you'll be able to see the sides of it and see inside the sub and that kind of thing. These side pieces are recessed just a slight bit, maybe slightly more than 1/8 of an inch, because what I'm going to do is use some oven-baked clay to mold on some material that I'm going to put like little cells and veins and whatever in. So this will be like a cross-section of the inner ear, and on the other side as well. The back is just going to be covered in wood. It's not going to be seen, but you are going to see these side parts, and you are going to see obviously out here. And then there's kind of the image of that. Very cool. And I had to adjust it and make sure that these overhang this little lip, and then obviously you have a little bit of a dark period, and you have these little weird looking things coming up, which Augie was calling fibers. I'm not sure what they are, but they're similar to it. Okay, I just wanted to get this all done and ready to go before I do any more painting on these cells to put in colors for the teal or turquoise and blue on there. So, okay. All right, and here is the finished painting, the colors added onto it. So at first I went over on this part, third of it, with the teal green ink. Then on this end of it, the 4, I used the indigo blue. And in the middle, I just did a 50-50 mix of the two and made up a batch and went back. It was very tricky because I didn't want to cover up the little symbols that Augie did a great job on painting. So what I did was I initially used this very fine brush and I lightly went around each of the symbols, just doing the paint around them. Then I went back over with this brush here and I just painted in around the rest of it. And even then, when it was done, there was a little too much paint on the symbols. So I took a Q-tip with a little bit of thinner and I just took it off of the black part in the middle, especially in the blue. The blue, it really covered up a lot of it, a lot more than the other ones. And then ended up with the gradient color that you see. And then after that completely dried, I did a clear coat over it, a satin finish over the whole thing. And then I went back and I used this color shifting paint, which goes from aqua flash shifts to blue. It's very pearlescent looking. So what I did was I just went around it just with the larger brush that I just showed and didn't cover up the black parts. And it's kind of translucent, so it's really hard to see on the camera, but yeah, you can kind of see it there shifting a bit. It has a bit of a metallic, almost a metallic sheen to it. And if you look at it from a certain angle, yeah, you can see how that kind of shifts colors. And then if you go back, you got to kind of catch it in the light. That's what you have to do. And I did the same on the bottom. Bottom's a little more obvious with it, as you can see. Gives it more of a metallic look. If I do it this way, yeah, again, I have to catch it with the light source. But you can see that the cells now have more of a sheen to them, which I think is cool. It adds a little bit of a depth. I didn't put any over the darker background. That stayed dark. Okay, so very cool. But when you look at it straight on, you get the different colors. You still see the shifting from the aqua to turquoise to blue. And on the bottom as well. All right, really happy with how that's turned out. I like the colors on it. It's still really hard to get the bright, vibrant colors that you see on the screen because they used studio lights in order to shine onto the sets and get that look. So, okay. All right, so I have a lot of progress on my base, as you can see here. I didn't really stop to do a lot of video, but I took a lot of pictures and some stills, which I showed previously. So I completed the side sections here with some oven baked clay. Basically just molded it on, sculpted it, put a little bit of detail in it, and made little organic bits. And then I went back and painted them. I'll show you this other side here in a moment. I didn't make them the same, but I did use some mostly blue tones and green tones, and to keep in the same color palette as the cells are going to be on the painting, which is like the teal or turquoise and blue and that kind of thing. And then once I got them all painted, I went back over with a blending coat of some pale blue-gray in order to kind of blend down some of the really bright colors and make it look a little less garish. There we go. I like this side a little bit better, actually. I didn't make them exactly the same, obviously. I used some organic-looking type of things just to give it some detail on the sides. But you're not really going to be looking at that mostly. It's going to be looking from the front. All right, so once I got that done, I cut some extra wood sections, as you can see, and I got them glued onto this main one here in the middle, first of all. So I have ones in the front here, these on top, and a couple on the back. I didn't really want to worry about trying to do things on the curves, but I want something a little more solid to put the styrene sheet onto and attach it to give it a nice solid base. Let me turn that around in the back and show you what it looks like. All right, so I have this thicker piece here. It's like a 3/4 inch thick piece of wood, which is glued. That's what the screws are going into in the middle. But it's open behind it. And of course it's open underneath here. So once I get the painting painted and put on and the sub positioned, I'm going to drill a hole down through it, probably around in the back area here somewhere, and take it down through here, and it'll come out to a battery pack. I'm going to have this whole back is going to be covered with a sheet of wood. I'll probably just paint that black or blue or something so that it will be all covered. You're not going to see anything in the back, but I will have an opening to be able to get to the batteries. I might do a remote control switch. That way also I can dim the lights on the dome around the sub, around the dome on top of the sub. So okay, so I have this glued together. I have screws in it. It's very solid. It's definitely going to be a very, very strong support to hold up the sub once I get it completed. So what I'm doing right now, before I put anything on for the styrene sheet and then finish up the painting, is I want to make the section down here for like the tubes and the other organic material that's going to be down here at the bottom over the ledge down in here. At one point, Cora falls down into here, and it's much deeper, it looks like in the film, but there are some yellowish tubes that she gets caught in, and the antibodies come and start attacking her. So that's what I'm working on. So before I did any of that and put this together, I cut this down to a much smaller section. And then what I did was I cut this piece of thin board, which fits on here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make the, I'm still going to use the oven baked clay, and I'm going to make the organic looking material here with some openings for the tubes to come up. I have a few ideas on how the tubes are going to work, and I'll show you that as well. But I can mold it on here, and then I can put this whole thing in the oven and bake it. And once it's painted and everything's on it, I can just glue it right onto the front of this after I put everything else on. So, okay. All right, so I'm working on the part down over the plateau, the little flat part there. And so what I did was I took some of the oven baked clay, I molded it onto a piece of wood and I baked it. Well, I didn't bake it first. I made these things. So what I'm trying to make is these weird looking stock things that are yellow that have tubes coming out of them. And at one point, Cora falls down into the chasm and she gets stuck between some of the tubes. And then the antibodies come and try to attack her. So I was looking at a bunch of different stills from the film, and they're kind of like bulb-like at the bottom, and then they come up to a thinner stalk, and they seem to be like in little bundles when you see them from a distance. And they're kind of a yellow, a clear yellow, or a little bit of an orange. So what I did was I made these here, and then I took pieces of thick wire, and I had to cut them off with a cutting wheel on my Dremel. They were just too strong to try to cut with a pair of wire cutters. But what I can do then is I got this frosted clear tube. Got this at Hobby Lobby. It's for making like necklaces, beads, bracelets, things like that. And it's kind of rubbery. So it fits just over top of these metal parts, as you can see. I have those ones right there. And so I'm going to cut them to length, and I'm going to put them, this 5 on each one of these. And then it also seems to have like some strands on it. So I have this scenic material. It's supposed to be hay, but it's yellow, which is cool because this is going to be yellow. I'm going to glue it on to like the sides of this, sticking up a little bit. And then I have some other things that I'm going to put down onto the floor here. But the main thing is these odd looking tubes that that are kind of filling this area here, or they call them fibers, below the cells of Henson, Donald Pleasant says. All right, so let me go ahead, and I'm actually going to use some of this wood glue, also because it's yellow and it dries yellow. I'm going to be painting this with some clear Tamiya when I'm done and that kind of thing. Clear Tamiya, yellow and orange. But this is the wood glue that I use to glue together the wood base as well. So I'll use some of that to glue these on, and then I can also glue this, like rub it onto these and glue the fibers on. So, okay. All right, so I completed putting the hay scenic material onto these. They're looking kind of messy and odd. Once I get them painted, they're going to be painted with a clear yellow and some clear orange, so it'll kind of bring it all together. But what I'm going to do before that is I want to add some other little detail in here to kind of build up this little area, since there's a lot of open patches. So what I'm doing is I'm making these little spiky things. These ones here are all together, and then these other ones here are loose. And how I'm doing this is with a 3D printing pen I've actually had for a few years. It's called the 3 Doodler. Got it for Christmas several years ago. It's actually a cool idea. I really haven't used it much because it involves a lot more like sculpting and creating yourself. So what it does is it's basically a similar principle to a filament printer, except it's a handheld thing. It has a nozzle, it heats it up. You have these rods. It came with these 2 packs, and they sell all different kinds, all different colors. These ones are matte, there's glossy, and there's other kind of ones that you can get from it. Not even sure if it's still available, but there's their website if you want to look into it. But what it does is, you should see this other one, okay, is you have a button that you press, and there's a little motor, and it actually pulls the filament into this thing here. Let me show you. Warmed up off on it. All right, sorry about that. It has to turn blue. It was sitting for a little bit. All right, so what I'm using is this piece of plastic because it sticks to it. And then when you press the button, the motor goes and it starts extruding plastic. Let me show you. And you press it and it stops. It only takes a few seconds and it starts to harden, and then you get a more rigid piece of plastic. So you can see this is already hardened. So what I've been doing is, sorry for the focus, is if you press it down onto the surface, it sticks to it, and then you can start building around it. You can actually pull it off of it and then release the button, and it will harden pretty quickly. So let me show you. The key is to let it hold for a few moments till it sets up. You can see it even gets that little stringy thing on the end. Okay, but there you go. So now it's a rigid stem. That's it for a few seconds. And I even kind of like this wispy piece. I can cut some of it off, but ultimately it'll help sell the idea of this being an organic filament, that kind of thing, or fibers. All right, and then I can break it off of the plastic. Sorry. Well, anyway, it does come off. But you can see that's kind of the concept. So it's hard doing it with one hand while I'm trying to film at the same time. But that's how I did that. And then I just created several together, so they kind of stuck together. That makes them a little bit easier to clump together. And these are some loose ones. And I'm using the yellow and orange because I'm going to use clear yellow and clear orange on this. And that's what my final colors are going to be. So, all right. So let me make several more of these. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and glue these down onto the thing. Now you're going to be ridiculous. There we go. Okay, yep. So, I mean, it's a similar premise to how a filament 3D printer works, except you don't have the computer guiding it and making the part. But I've seen people making some pretty incredible things online, and they just use this and just go around and do their own thing and just slowly build up a structure. And then they use these other hot tools that have a smoothing thing, and they smooth it out. So it definitely has some cool applications. I just haven't had too many that would work for me other than this one. So I think this will be pretty cool. And then I'll just use some CA glue to glue these down onto here, or maybe some 5-minute epoxy, we'll see. Once it's done, I'm just going to paint the whole thing pretty much one homogeneous color. Might make the bottom part a little bit darker, but most of these are just going to be, all of these are just going to be like a clear yellow with some clear orange over them. So, okay. All right, and here is a mock-up of the finalized fibers down below. I ended up going with a little more of the orange, which looked more accurate to the film. Here it is mocked up with my backdrop that I'm just sitting in the background of it. To kind of give you an idea of the of the colors. I think turned out pretty cool. So you can see I have the little fibers, smaller ones there, the larger ones, everything's painted the same orange color. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. All right, so very happy with how the base turned out. There's a little bit more work on that as far as putting some stripping around the edge of the painting and finishing up the back of it, that sort of thing, which I will show in the next video. So the next video, as I said on the intro, will be focusing on the Proteus and doing some modifications on it, getting that painted, and also creating some figures, 3D printing some figures, which I will get painted, that are going to be on the outside of the sub, and also the pilot on the inside of the sub, and then showing the finale with the sub on the base. So I will be getting that out here in probably just the next day or so. But thank you to all my new subscribers, and I will see you in the finale video coming out shortly.